A student is asking ChatGPT whether a product job in Austin pays enough to justify the move. At the same time, an early career worker is asking what a customer success role in Chicago should actually pay. And somewhere else, a manager is approving another AI license because, well, the team should probably have access. 3 different moments, one shared problem. AI is becoming career infrastructure before most institutions know how to teach it, measure it, or distribute the advantage fairly. Quick disclosure before we start. AI-assisted tools were used in part of research and production support. Final editorial judgment, risk posture, and release approval stayed human-led. This is operational guidance, not legal advice. These are my opinions and not representative of any organization. All right, let's get on with the show.
This is AI Change Desk. Thank you for choosing to tune in.
The freshest signal this week is not just that AI is showing up inside work. We already covered that. The freshest signal is that AI is starting to shape who gets ready for work, who negotiates better inside work, and which institutions can still claim they're preparing people for what work is becoming. That is a different layer. Episode 11 was the work surface. Episode 12 was whether we could see adoption honestly. Episode 13 is about the pipeline feeding that surface. Schools, workers, managers, training systems, and career decisions. And sometimes what you decide you want to cook for dinner. All right, so let's talk about story 1. OpenAI published a March 5th piece arguing that education systems need to close what is called an AI capability gap. And the striking part is not students use AI. Everybody knows that. The striking part is how they frame the gap. OpenAI says college-age adults are the biggest adopters among age groups. And how big is this age group? Well, it's about 900 million people using ChatGPT each week. But even advanced students, users still operate roughly 90 to 99% below what OpenAI defines as power user behavior. That is not a usage story. That is a fluency story. Students are showing up. The question is whether they are learning how to use AI in ways that actually map to more modern work. And OpenAI's own answer is pretty direct. Basic use is not enough. Students need to move into real application. Studying, building, creating, coding, evaluating trade-offs, even supervising agents. So, what makes this relevant for us is that the company is not only describing the gap, it's also describing the institutional response it wants to see. ChatGPT EDU deployments, certifications in pilot at Arizona State and Cal State, and coursework that mirrors real professional work. So the management takeaway here is not, schools should adopt AI. That is way too shallow. The real takeaway is this. Access without skill design turns into a sorting mechanism. The students who already know how to push deeper will compound faster. The students who only learn the basic prompt layer will still say they use AI, but they will not get the same lift. Well, the difference matters more than the license count, right? So let's talk about story 2. OpenAI also published on March 17th piece saying Americans are sending nearly 3 million messages per day to ChatGPT on average in the US. And guess what it's about? It's about wages, compensation, or earnings. Well, that is a real behavioral signal. Workers are not waiting for HR, universities, or labor market platforms to explain what roles pay. They are already using AI to translate scattered wage information into something usable. OpenAI says people are mainly using it for two kinds of help: turning pay information into a benchmark they can actually use, and understanding what a role, company, career path, or even business idea might realistically pay. Well, that means AI is doing something deeper than productivity. But are we measuring that? Or should we? It's becoming a private career advisor, a compensation translator, in some cases, probably a confidence engine. If that sounds small, well, it really isn't. Compensation information changes what jobs pay and what jobs people apply for. So whether they negotiate, whether they relocate, whether a career path feels worth the effort, that all depends on what they could get from the information that they're now prompting for. So if workers are already using AI to make these calls, well, guess what? The institutions around them are no longer just competing on access to information. Well, guess what they're competing on? Now they're competing on how legible and how useful their guidance is compared with an AI sitting in somebody's browser at midnight. That should get the attention of some employers. Sure did for me. So if you're in like career service teams or workforce programs, or even a manager trying to keep internal mobility credible, well, you should be thinking about that. Well, because once AI becomes the fastest way to benchmark a job, any slow or vague institutional answers starts to feel weak. Okay, let's talk about story number 3. The good news is institutions are reacting. The more interesting question is how. Microsoft is giving us 2 useful examples. First, in January, it announced Elevate for Educators. Was educator credentials, professional development, communities, AI-powered simulations, and AI-specific tools built for classrooms. Second, it announced that the eligible college students can get 12 months of Microsoft 365 Premium and LinkedIn Premium career subscription for free. Yep, for free. Of course, with Copilot features included. That combination matters. It says that the institutional response is moving in 2 directions at once: train the teacher and equip the student. And then on March 27th, Microsoft and Victoria University announced a data center academy. The press release says the program exists because cloud adoption and AI are driven infrastructure growth faster than the labor pool is catching up. It's explicitly about job-ready talent, skill gaps, hands-on training, certification, career readiness, and recruitment exposure. That's the cleanest employment signal in this set. AI does not change office software. It also changes labor demand underneath the stack. So now we're seeing 3 layers at once. Schools trying to teach AI fluency, workers using AI directly to pay and career decisions, and industry building new training pipelines where AI demand is creating skill shortages. That is not one product trend. That is career infrastructure getting rewired in public as I'm speaking. So let's do a continuity check. If you have been with the show the last few weeks, here's the clean through line. Episode 11 said AI was disappearing into the default work surfaces. Episode 12 said we needed honest visibility into whether it's changed the work. Well, episode 13 says something slightly more uncomfortable. And before we even finish the visibility work inside the company, AI is already changing how people get ready for the company. And that's the next layer. We're not replaying the same governance memo. We're following the operation consequences outwards, from tool surface to adoption visibility to workforce preparation. And here's where teams and institutions get this wrong. They confuse access with readiness. School gives students ChatGPT access and calls that preparation. An employer gives staff Copilot access and calls that upskilling. And a workforce program adds AI literacy to a slide and calls that modernization. Yeah, well, none of those are the same building fluency. Fluency means the person can ask a better question, challenge a polished answer. You use AI inside a real workflow and notice when the output is good looking, but weak, and translate the results into a decision that still makes sense. Access matters. It just does not finish the job. And this is where the pattern gets ugly. The people who already have confidence, context, and support get much more from the same tools that the people who do not. So institutions can accidentally widen the advantage gap while telling themselves they're closing it, but there's some hidden trade-offs. AI can democratize access to guidance while concentrating advantage in the hands of the already fluent. That sounds contradictory. It isn't. The upside is real. Faster career information, lower friction to ask basic questions, better support for people switching fields or locations, and more confidence to explore roles that used to feel opaque. The risk is also real. Polished but shallow advice gets overtrusted. Students confuse frequent use with sophisticated use, and managers confuse tool rollout with workforce preparation. And institutions celebrate access gains while capability gaps quietly widen. So the operative question is not, is AI helping people? Probably is. The harder question is, who is getting the compounding benefit? And who's just getting easier autocomplete? Case 1. Student to internship pipeline. A university career office tells students, yes, you can use AI for preparation. Fine. But what does that actually mean? A strong workflow would look like this. The student uses AI to break down a job description into explicit skills. Compare that role across the cities, identify which portfolio project would close the biggest gap, draft 3 smarter questions for an informational interview, and practice a salary conversation without guessing. That's not cheating, that is career preparation. But here's where it fails. If the institution never teaches students how to verify the salary range, challenge the suggested skill map, or notice when the advice is overconfident, then the workflow looks sophisticated while the judgment layer stays weak. So the real institutional move is not allow AI, it is define the workflow, teach the verification step, and show what good use looks like. Okay, now, case 2, internal mobility and pay conversation. An employee wants to move from support into operations. They use AI to understand comparable roles, likely pay bands and things that you would look at. And they look at what skills they would need to build credibility for the switch. That can be good for everyone. The employee gets clarity, the manager gets a more concrete development conversation. The company may keep someone who otherwise would have left, but it fails, the official system cannot respond with equal clarity. If the employee gets a crisp AI answer in 30 seconds and then gets a vague institutional language for 3 weeks, trust shifts fast. That does not mean the AI answer is always right. That means the institution answer now has a higher bar. That's the change. AI is not only replacing search, it's raising the standard for what helpful guidance feels like. Ouch. Okay, so case 3, community college to data center pipeline. This is where the labor signal gets more concrete. Imagine a community college or regional workforce partner trying to connect learners to AI-adjacent infrastructure jobs. The old model sounds simple enough. Teach a narrow technical skill, map it to a known role, connect students to employers. Okay, now the past is messier. The student is being told AI is changing everything. The employer is saying they need job-ready talent. The training institution is trying to decide which skills are durable enough to teach before the market shifts again. And that is why Microsoft and Victoria University Data Center Academy signals matter. It's not just another partnership announcement. It is a visible example of infrastructure demand forcing education and employment systems to coordinate faster. The good version of this workflow is simple. The training program names the target roles. The employer names the practical capabilities that matter. The students know what certifications, experience, and behavior actually move them closer to the role. The bad versions is also familiar. Broad future of work language, weak translation into real jobs, and no clarity on what AI changes in the role versus what still needs old-fashioned competence. This is where people lose trust. So the lesson is pretty basic. If you are preparing people for AI-shaped jobs, the guidance has to get more concrete, not more inspirational. What leaders will probably misread here? I think a lot of leaders are going to misread the first wave of this. They will see high student usage or high employee experimentation and conclude the workforce is adapting just fine. Well, that is the easy read. It's also the lazy read. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Because usage can rise for very different reasons. Curiosity, anxiety, compensation pressure, lack of institutional clarity, or actual genuine skill growth. Those are not the same thing. Leaders also going to misread convenience as preparedness. If people can get a polished answer fast, it feels like the capability problem is being solved. But a fast answer is not the same as an informed judgment. And some leaders will remain unnamed, will misread demand signals as proof their existing talent systems are good enough. They'll say, "Ooh, our people have access," or "We already rolled out our training," or if you're at a university or college, "Students are already using these tools anyways." That misses the harder point. The standard for useful guidance has changed. If your institution is slower, vaguer, or less actionable than the AI tools people already use in private, your official system will keep losing authority even if it keeps formal control. This is not a branding problem. This is an operating problem. Okay, so here's a real ops mini case. A company announces enterprise AI access and new learning program. The launch email says this will help everyone adapt to the future of work. 3 months later, the strongest adopters have become dramatically faster. The average managers still do not know what good AI use looks like, and HR is getting the more compensation question than before. Career ladders have not been updated, and employees are quietly using AI for the role planning in ways the institution never designed for. Nothing exploded, but the system's already drifting. That kind of failure is easy to miss because it does not look like an accident or an incident. For just to talk about that, it looks like uneven momentum. And here's what not to do. Do not treat AI access as proof of workforce readiness. Do not call people AI literate because they use the tool a lot. And don't build student or worker programs around generic prompting tips. Don't let career services, HR, and managers operate on slower, vaguer guidance on the model itself. And do not assume fairness improves automatically just because information got easier to reach. That's not how that works. And if you do that, the people who are already best positioned to win faster and everybody else gets a nice looking participation layer, yeah, that's going to be a problem. And here's the decision block. If I were leading a school, a workforce program, or internal talent function, I'd make 3 decisions this week. Decision 1, define one AI-supported career workflow. Say it plainly. Students and employees may use AI for role search, skill mapping, and interview preparations. Every workflow must include one verification step using an official salary, policy, or job family source. This is much better than a vague use responsibly line. Decision 2, separate access from fluency. AI access is universal, but fluency is demonstrated. We'll measure fluency through workflow exercises that require comparison, verification, and revision, not just tool usage. That keeps usage metrics from pretending to be skill metrics. Decision 3, raise the standard for institutional guidance. Here's what you could say. Career services, HR, and managers will publish role, pay, and skill guidance in formats that are specific and timely as the AI tools people are already using. That is the real challenge. And if your institution cannot answer basic career questions with clarity, the model will become the default. Guide whether you plan for that or not. And here's the 45-minute career infrastructure sweep. Do this once this week. Pick one career-facing workflow: an internship prep, an internal mobility, salary benchmarking, or educator training. Ask where people are already using AI. whether you approved it or not. Identify one place where AI is faster than your official guidance. Add one verification step and one named owner. Then decide what good use looks like in plain language. That is not a giant transformation program. That is just basic operating honesty applied to a workforce change. And what schools and employers should decide this quarter. If we zoom out a little, it's not only a this week problem, it's also a this quarter problem. Because the organization that handles this well are not just going to publish better AI guidelines, they're going to make a few very specific operating decisions. And for schools, I would decide three things this quarter. First, which student workflows are explicitly AI supported, not in theory, in practice. Research, career prep, writing support, even coding help. Second, what does demonstrated fluency look like? Can a student compare options, verify a claim, revise output, and explain the trade-off they made? Third, where does institutional guidance need to get sharper because students are already asking the model instead? Okay, so you employers out there, I would decide three parallel things. First, which career-facing workflow do we want to make sure legible with AI rather than letting them stay informal? Internal mobility, role research, skill mapping, compensation clarity. Second, what guidance has to be upgraded so managers, HR, and career frameworks are not slower and fuzzier than the model? Third, where do you want judgment to stay visibly human? Because not every career decision should collapse into AI-assisted convenience. That is the deeper closing point here. The winning institution this year will not be the one that merely adopt AI. They will be the one that makes work preparation, career guidance, and role navigation more trustworthy because AI is already in the loop. That is a much harder standard. That is also the real one. Episode 11 was work surface. Episode 12 was adoption visibility. Episode 13 is the career infrastructure check. Because once AI starts shaping how people prepare for work, ask about pay, and judge their next move, the management problem is bigger than software rollout. And here's the listener question. Where is your institution weaker right now? Access, fluency, or trustworthy guidance? A lot to chew on. This is AI Change Desk. Until next time.
This is AI Change Desk. See you next time.